Get away if you want to survive, my neighbor messaged. 10 minutes later, ... The elevator hummed softly, as Malik glanced at the reflection of his tired face in the bronze doors, wondering how long it would take before the day finally gave him a break. He worked late again, just like every night this week, crunching numbers for a project no one but his boss seemed to care about. The office building was mostly empty now, its silence pressing on his ears like static. He checked his phone, out of habit, nothing but the faint glow of missed notifications. Then, just as the elevator slid past the 5th floor, a new message appeared. It was from Dana, his neighbor. The text was short, frantic, and made his pulse spike. Get away if you want to survive. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss our latest uploads. He blinked at the words, half expecting a follow-up message, but nothing came. For a moment, he wondered if it was some kind of joke. Dana wasn't the type to send strange messages. She was practical. The sort who laughed politely at the chaos of others. The urgency in her words didn't match the woman he'd seen just this morning, watering her plants and reminding him to pick up his package from the lobby. 10 minutes ago, everything was fine. Now, his gut tightened as the elevator doors slid open to reveal a dimly lit corridor that shouldn't have been dark at all. The building's automated lights always stayed on after hours. He stepped out, holding his phone like a lifeline, and called her name under his breath, even though she was probably at home. The silence that answered him felt wrong, dense, like the air itself was waiting for something. He could hear a faint mechanical whir, distant yet uneven, like something heavy moving against metal. Malik swallowed hard and forced a laugh, trying to shake off the unease. Maybe it was a maintenance crew. Maybe she meant something entirely different. He typed a quick reply, Dana, what's going on? And hit send. The message stayed on sending, longer than it should have. As he reached the corner near the conference rooms, he caught a flicker of movement at the far end of the hall. A silhouette, faint but unmistakably human-shaped, slipped out of view just as he turned his head. His mind raced through possibilities. A security guard, a coworker, or maybe just his own reflection from one of the glass walls. But then he noticed something that made his skin prickle. The reflection wasn't moving like he was. It was half a second behind, lagging like a faulty video feed. His fingers tightened around his phone, thumb hovering over the screen as another faint vibration buzzed through his palm. The message was finally sent. But what came next wasn't a response. Instead, a faint glow appeared on the screen, flickering lines of text that weren't from any chat app he recognized. You have 10 minutes. The words pulsed once, and then the screen went black. Malik froze, heart hammering in his chest as the elevator behind him dinged again, though he hadn't pressed any button. The doors opened to nothing but darkness, no light from within. The air inside was colder, carrying a faint metallic temps that made him step back instinctively. He didn't believe in the supernatural, didn't even like horror movies, but right now every rational part of him was screaming to run. He took a cautious step backward, phone raised like it could somehow defend him. That's when the emergency lights kicked in, flooding the hallway in deep red. It painted everything in harsh, stuttering flashes: walls, glass, his own pale face staring back at him. Somewhere below, machinery groaned to life, and the building's automated voice echoed faintly from the intercom. System error. Please evacuate immediately. The voice repeated, mechanical and emotionless, looping after a pause that felt too long. Malik turned, heading toward the stairwell. But the glass wall to his right shimmered strangely, as if rippling under invisible heat. He stopped mid-step. The reflection in the glass had shifted again. The other him was still standing by the elevator, staring forward while Malik had moved away. Its lips parted slightly, forming a word he couldn't hear. Then, without warning, the lights blinked out completely. Darkness swallowed the corridor, and the building exhaled with a low electric sigh. His phone flashlight burst to life automatically, a thin beam cutting through the dark, revealing the faint outlines of doors and signage. That's when he saw it, a smear of something on the floor, trailing toward the corner. Not blood, more like oil, thick and iridescent, glinting under the beam. He crouched, shining the light closer. The smell hit him, next-burnt plastic and ozone, like something electrical had melted. His stomach twisted. The trail led toward the conference room, the one with the panoramic city view that usually glowed with life after sunset. Now, its windows were a wall of black. Malik hesitated, then reached for the handle. It was warm, too warm. He pushed the door open a crack, and the smell grew stronger, carrying a faint hum beneath it, a resonance that made his teeth ache. Through the narrow opening, he saw outlines of overturned chairs, a laptop flickering on the table, and a shape slumped near the far wall. He pushed the door wider, stepping inside. The air shimmered faintly around him, warping light like heat off asphalt. The shape on the floor wasn't moving. As he drew closer, his light caught on something metallic embedded in the wall behind it, wires, scorched and curling, as though they'd been torn apart from the inside. The figure on the ground was a man, face down, wearing the same security uniform he'd seen a dozen times in the lobby. Malik knelt, hesitating before touching the man's shoulder. His skin was cold, but the faint hum still vibrated through the air around him, steady, alive. He turned the guard over slowly, and the light revealed eyes wide open, reflective. Silver, not human. Malik stumbled back, nearly dropping his phone. The guard's chest moved once, like a malfunctioning machine trying to breathe. A faint voice rasped from the man's unmoving lips. "You shouldn't be here." Then his body twitched, limbs locking before going still. Malik's pulse roared in his ears. He backed away toward the door, trying to remember where the nearest exit was. The emergency lights blinked on again, casting everything in deep crimson. For a split second, he thought he saw movement in the glass wall opposite, the reflection of something. Stepping out of the elevator, he didn't wait to confirm. Malik bolted into the hallway, heart pounding, phone clenched tight. The intercom voice repeated its sterile message as he ran. "System error. Please evacuate immediately." He turned toward the stairwell, yanking at the handle. It wouldn't budge. The metal was cold, almost biting, and locked tight despite every pull. He slammed a shoulder into it, pain shooting down his arm, but it didn't move. Behind him, the elevator chimed again. That same slow, rhythmic ding that echoed through the red light like a heartbeat. He turned, breathing hard, as the doors began to slide open. The light inside flickered wildly, and the air grew heavy with the scent of ozone. His phone vibrated again. Another message appeared from Dana, though the name flickered between her contact and a string of numbers. "Don't let it see you." Malik's breath hitched. He took a step back, pressing against the unyielding stairwell door. The elevator doors finished opening, revealing the same dim reflection of the hallway, but no one was there. He could see his own terrified face mirrored in the polished walls, red light painting his features. Then, slowly, a shadow in the reflection began to move on its own, stepping forward even as he stayed still. It wasn't shaped quite like him anymore. Malik's breath came fast and uneven as the reflection's distorted shape lurched forward in the glass. His first instinct was to run, but his feet stayed rooted, his body locked between disbelief and terror. The thing in the reflection cocked its head, mirroring his motion half a beat too late, as if struggling to imitate him. Its edges shimmered, glitching faintly in the red light. Malik raised his phone like a shield, though the small beam of its flashlight only deepened the shadows along the corridor. He wanted to scream for help, but the building felt sealed off, the silence thick enough to choke on. Then, just as he blinked, the reflection smiled. It was his face, but hollow-eyed, mouth stretching too wide to be human. He staggered backward, slamming against the locked stairwell door. The reflection stepped forward again, but instead of the sound of shoes on tile, he heard a low crackling hum, like radio static behind glass. Malik fumbled at the doorknob, then hit it with his shoulder again. Pain shot through him, but still the metal didn't give. He turned, heart hammering, and sprinted down the corridor in the opposite direction, away from the elevator. The red lights pulsed overhead, casting everything in rhythmic shadow. Every few steps, he caught a glimpse of movement in the glass panes, sometimes his own reflection, sometimes something slightly wrong. The wrong ones lingered longer, watching as he reached the reception area. The air changed again, colder, sharper, like static before a lightning strike. He slowed, breathing hard. The reception desk's monitors flickered to life one by one, displaying rows of distorted symbols that crawled across the screen in waves. None of it made sense, but his phone buzzed again, startling him. Another message from Dana. "It can copy. Don't let it touch you." He froze, reading the words over and over until they blurred. Copy, the thing in the glass, wasn't just mimicking him, it was learning. He looked up at the nearest pane of glass and saw 3 reflections now, faint and overlapping, all shaped like him but standing at slightly different angles. One of them tilted its head backward and mouthed something silently. Soon, the elevator dinged again behind him. Malik spun, backing toward the desk. His phone's flashlight beam wavered across the polished floors. And that's when he noticed the dark lines creeping along the cracks between tiles. They weren't shadows. They were spreading, like veins of oil snaking outward from the elevator doors. He could smell the same burnt, electrical scent from before, stronger now. It felt alive, like the air itself was pulsing with energy. He had to get out. Somewhere, anywhere but here. He remembered the service corridor on the opposite end, the one that led to the parking garage. If he could reach that, maybe he could escape. He kept his light low and moved quickly, hugging the wall, avoiding every reflective surface he could. The reflections were getting clearer, sharper. In some, he wasn't even moving the same way they were. One reflection paused while he kept walking, another turned its head as if watching something over his shoulder. His phone buzzed again, but he didn't dare look this time. Every sound, the echo of his shoes, the faint hum of machinery seemed to carry forever. He passed a glass partition and caught sight of the reflection again, except this time it wasn't him at all. It was Dana. She looked terrified, mouthing something urgently, but the sound wouldn't carry. Then the glass rippled, and she was gone. The hallway turned sharply ahead, and Malik could see the maintenance door in the distance, heavy metal and unmarked. His pulse quickened. He broke into a jog, then a full sprint, as a sudden crash echoed behind him. He didn't look back. The red lights flickered wildly, plunging the corridor into alternating bursts of light and blackness. He could hear footsteps, now heavy, mechanical, echoing unevenly. Every time the light blinked on, the sound got closer. His phone vibrated violently in his hand, then went still. He reached the maintenance door and grabbed the handle, pulling with everything he had. It creaked, jammed for a moment, then swung open into darkness. Malik dove through and slammed it shut behind him. Twisting the manual lock until it clicked, he leaned against the cold metal, chest heaving, ears straining for any sound from the hallway. Nothing but the low thrum of distant machinery. The maintenance tunnel was narrow, lined with pipes that hissed softly. Emergency lights flickered overhead, painting everything in alternating amber and shadow. Malik wiped sweat from his forehead, trying to steady his breathing. He'd barely taken 2 steps forward when something clattered on the floor ahead. A wrench. It rolled toward him, slow and deliberate, stopping just inches from his foot. His stomach dropped. Someone or something was ahead of him. He crouched, picking up the wrench. It felt solid, cold, reassuring in its weight. The tunnel split into 2 paths a few meters ahead. One led downward toward the parking area. The other curved back toward the generator room. He hesitated. The air coming from the left path was colder, damp, carrying the faint scent of oil. The right smelled faintly of ozone, like the air upstairs. He remembered the last time Dana had mentioned this maintenance route. She'd said the generator room connected to an emergency stairwell that bypassed the main floors. If he could reach that, maybe he could make it out before whatever was following him did. He chose the right path, moving quietly, each step measured. The deeper he went, the louder the hum of the generators became, a deep rhythmic pulse that made the metal walls tremble. When he finally reached the room, the sight froze him. The generators were running, but their panels flickered with the same distorted symbols he'd seen on the monitors upstairs. One of the panels sparked violently, sending arcs of blue light across the floor. Malik ducked behind a support column just as the lights flared again, and in that flash he saw a figure standing near the far wall, tall, unmoving, facing away from him. It looked human. Broad shoulders, work uniform, maybe one of the technicians. Relief flooded through him for half a second before he noticed the shimmer, the faint distortion around the figure's edges. Like heat haze, he gripped the wrench tighter, heart pounding. Slowly, he took a step forward. "Hey," he whispered, voice cracking. "You okay?" The figure turned its head, but only halfway. The movement was too smooth, too controlled. Its face caught the light, one side human, the other pale metal beneath peeling skin. Malik stumbled back, the wrench slipping from his hand and clanging on the floor. The sound echoed like thunder. The thing tilted its head, then stepped forward. Each motion, deliberate and wrong. He bolted, sprinting back toward the tunnel. The creature's footsteps followed, heavy and fast. Sparks rained down from the ceiling as cables tore loose under the vibration. Malik turned a corner, his lungs burning, and nearly tripped over a fallen toolbox. He could hear the mechanical rhythm behind him. 1 step. Pause. 2 steps. Pause, as if it were pacing itself to his fear. Then his phone buzzed again, impossibly loud in the silence. He pulled it out mid-run, glancing down just long enough to see a new message. "It's learning from you. Stop running." He didn't have time to think. He threw the phone behind him, its light tumbling into the dark, and kept going. Ahead, the tunnel opened into a loading area filled with metal crates and dim emergency lights. A flickering exit sign glowed faintly on the far side. Malik pushed forward, weaving between crates, the echo of his breath loud in his ears. He could feel the presence behind him still, slower now, methodical. He grabbed a nearby fire extinguisher and hurled it toward the sound, but it clanged uselessly off a wall. Then, Through the chaos of his heartbeat, he heard something new, a faint voice from the far corner. Familiar, Malik. It was Dana. Her tone was trembling. Human. It's me. This way. He froze, staring toward the voice. The red light above flickered, revealing her silhouette half hidden behind a crate. Her eyes were wide, terrified, her hand outstretched. Relief and confusion tangled in his chest. He started toward her, then stopped. She looked right, but something about the way she moved too still between breaths felt wrong. Dana, he said carefully, inching closer. When did you text me? Her face twitched. Now, she whispered. We have to leave now. He took one more step, and her expression changed, eyes darting downward, just slightly. Behind him, the real Dana's voice crackled through the intercom, weak but desperate. Don't go near it. Malik froze where he stood, caught between the false Dana in front of him and the trembling voice echoing from the intercom behind. The light above sputtered again, strobing across the warehouse in chaotic bursts. Each flash showed a different expression on the figure's face, pleading, then smiling, then utterly blank. His breath came shallow, his mind struggling to keep pace with the unreality of it all. Dana, he whispered, though the name felt like a question he didn't want answered. The figure took one step closer, and the air around her shimmered like heat haze. Her outline blurred, edges breaking into faint, geometric flickers. You need to trust me, she said softly. Her voice was perfect, same pitch, same trembling, but her eyes glinted like polished glass. He took a slow step back, heart hammering. The intercom crackled again, static rushing through the speaker before the real Dana's voice cut through. Sharper now. Malik, listen to me. That's not Mit's reflection copy. Don't let it touch you. The creature's head twitched at the sound, then turned toward the nearest reflective surfacer. Glossy steel panel bolted to a nearby crate. Its movements rippled, as if reacting to its own echo. Malik grabbed a loose metal rod from the floor and raised it, though his hands shook so violently he could barely keep hold of it. Stay away, he warned. The copy smiled, and in the flickering red light, its teeth gleamed metallic. You always say that, it murmured, voice warping at the edges. But you never mean it. The temperature dropped suddenly, his breath turning visible. The air thickened with the same electric temps he'd smelled before, and the panel behind the creature began to warp like water disturbed by wind. It reached out toward him, its hand distorting, fingers stretching too long. Malik swung the rod hard, striking its arm. The impact cracked like ice, shattering. The figure staggered back, its surface flickering, half its face momentarily collapsing into a web of black static before Then the thing screamed. It wasn't human. It was feedback. A howl of interference that rattled the lights and made the floor vibrate. Malik dropped the rod and bolted toward the far side of the room, lungs burning. He heard the sound of metal scraping behind him as the reflection copy followed, glitching in and out of visibility. Each flash of the emergency lights showed it closer. He dodged between crates, nearly tripping over a coiled hose, and spotted a door marked electrical access. If he could get in there, maybe he could overload whatever system was letting this thing exist. He yanked the handle, it was locked. He kicked at it, desperation rising. The intercom sputtered again. Malik, Dana's voice said. Quieter now. You're near the backup control panel. You can shut it out from there, but you have to ground yourself first. Find something that's not metal. He scanned frantically. Everything was metal, floor, walls, even the crates. But near the far corner, a thick rubber mat lay crumpled beside a toppled forklift. He ran for it as the creature's distorted footsteps echoed closer, the air pulsing with static. He dove, landing half on the mat and half on cold steel. The shock of impact jarred his teeth, but he scrambled to pull the mat beneath him completely. The reflection hissed, sound bending unnaturally, and for a second he could see its form clearly. Its entire body was made of something translucent and reflective, like liquid chrome shaped into the echo of a person. Inside, faint currents of light moved like trapped lightning. It tilted its head, watching him with an expression almost curious. Then, suddenly, the power flickered. The red lights dimmed, replaced by a brief flash of normal white. In that instant, Malik saw the reflection's shadow on the wall behind it and realized it wasn't a single figure anymore. There were dozens of silhouettes flickering faintly, each one slightly off, lagging like different frames of the same movement. The intercom popped with static. They're multiplying, Dana's voice warned. Every time the system reboots, it makes more of them. You have to cut the main feed before they sync. Malik grabbed a nearby metal crate lid, using it like a makeshift shield as he crawled toward the electrical door. The reflection lunged, slamming into the crate and sending him sprawling. Sparks exploded overhead, Pain lanced up his arm as he hit the ground, but adrenaline pushed him up again. He swung the crate lid, catching the thing in the chest. The impact made it stagger backward, flickering violently. Malik seized the moment to grab the lock handle, twisting it until the mechanism snapped. The door swung open, revealing a narrow room filled with humming transformers and tangled cables. He ducked inside and slammed it shut, locking it again with the broken handle jammed into place. The hum in here was louder, vibrating in his bones. Rows of monitors displayed corrupted readouts, waveforms, digital noise, symbols shifting faster than his eyes could follow. He spotted a large emergency lever, labeled Main Disconnect. It was sealed with a heavy plastic guard and a warning. Manual override engaged, admin access only. He didn't hesitate. Malik grabbed a metal pipe and smashed the plastic casing. The lever resisted for a moment, then gave with a deep, mechanical thunk. The hum deepened, then died entirely. For a few seconds, the silence was perfect. Then came the crash. Something hit the other side of the door. The metal dented inward. Malik staggered back, eyes darting around for another exit. None. Just vents, low and narrow. The lights flickered back on, weaker this time, as if the building itself were straining to stay alive. Then, through the static of the monitors, a faint video feed blinked to life, grainy, black and white, showing the lobby. He saw Dana there, standing by the elevator, holding her phone. She was alive. Relief hit him so hard he nearly dropped to his knees. But then her expression shifted. She looked up at the camera, directly at him, eyes wide. Her mouth moved, forming silent words. "Behind you." Malik spun, barely in time to see the reflection phase through the damaged door like liquid mercury. It moved slower now, its body fragmenting with each step, but still relentless. He grabbed the fallen pipe again, brandishing it like a weapon. The thing reached out, its hand passing through the air with a faint shimmer. He swung, the pipe passed through its arm, leaving a ripple that bled sparks of light. The reflection shuddered, then split, two of them now, each thinner, less stable, but moving independently. Malik backed toward the wall, cornered. His eyes darted to the live feed again. Dana was gone. The screen flickered, showing only static. Then his phone, he hadn't realized it had turned itself back on, buzzed on the floor where he'd dropped it earlier. The same unknown number as before flashed across the screen. The message read, "You can end it. Break the mirror." He looked up, confused, then realized the entire far wall of the electrical room was lined with polished panels. They weren't decorative. They were part of the system. Every reflection, every echo, originated from these surfaces. He took a deep breath, grabbed the pipe with both hands, and swung. The first strike cracked the mirror cleanly down the middle. The second shattered it completely. The sound was like thunder breaking underwater. A wave of static washed through the room, lights exploding in white flashes. The reflections screamed, voices overlapping in perfect, agonized harmony. Then everything went dark. Malik dropped to his knees, chest heaving, the air thick with the smell of burning circuits. For a long time, nothing moved. No sound, no hum, just the faint tick of cooling metal. When he finally opened his eyes again, faint daylight was bleeding through the edges of a vent. The emergency lights had died, leaving only the soft glow of morning filtering in. His phone screen flickered weakly, the battery nearly gone. Another message appeared, this time from Dana's real number. "I'm outside. It's over. Come now." He stared at the words for a long moment before forcing himself to stand. His muscles ached, every step feeling heavier than the last. He pushed open the vent grate and crawled into the narrow space beyond. The tunnel was quiet, dust motes floating in the pale light. He followed it until it opened into a side corridor near the lobby. The world outside the vents felt strange still, too clean, as if everything had reset. The monitors in the reception area were blank now, and the elevator doors stood open, revealing nothing but darkness beyond. Malik's shoes echoed softly as he crossed the lobby. The morning sun angled through the glass walls, catching on a faint residue of oily sheen across the floor that evaporated as he passed. The front doors were unlocked. He hesitated before pushing them open, the memory of that first message echoing in his mind, "Get away if you want to survive." Outside, the city looked normal, cars passing, people walking, the sky pale blue. Dana was standing by the curb, wrapped in a coat, her face pale but alive. Relief flooded through him, though his chest still felt tight with the weight of what he'd seen. She met his eyes and managed a small, trembling smile. "You made it," she said, her voice cracked. "I wasn't sure when the system started copying ... She stopped, glancing back at the building. Malik followed her gaze. The glass facade shimmered faintly in the sunlight, 1,000 reflections staring back at them. For a heartbeat, One of them smiled. The morning air should have felt clean. Freeing, but to Malik it was heavy, electric, like the static charge before a thunderstorm. The reflections in the glass tower lingered in his mind long after they crossed the street. Each one too still, too synchronized. Dana led him toward her car, a battered gray sedan parked near the corner. She moved quickly, glancing back at the building as though afraid it might follow them. When they got inside, she locked the doors immediately and started the engine. "You're lucky," she said quietly, eyes fixed on the road. "When I saw the system breach hit, I thought you were all ready." She stopped mid-sentence, hands trembling against the steering wheel. They tried to override everything, Malik. Every mirrored surface, every reflective network node. The whole building became a conduit. He frowned, still shaking. "What are you talking about? You mean those things the copies were some kind of AI glitch?" Dana shook her head, her expression taut. "Not AI. Not exactly. A resonance experiment gone wrong. The company was testing an optical quantum relay supposed to transfer data through light reflections without delay, but something inside the system began feeding back. It started copying biological patterns, not just digital ones." Malik stared at her, unable to find words. "You're saying it copied people?" She nodded. "Or their energy signatures, their neural patterns. But it didn't understand what it was copying. It just imitated form, not consciousness. That's why they're unstable. The reflections collapse because they don't know they're not real." The car moved through the city streets, the morning sunlight glinting off buildings that now looked threatening in their brightness. Every window felt like a watching eye. Malik caught himself avoiding his own reflection in the passenger side mirror. "How did you know?" he asked quietly. "How did you know to warn me?" Dana hesitated, her knuckles whitening. "Because I helped design the initial framework, before they took it too far." She exhaled shakily. "I left when I realized they were merging it with human mapping tech. They said it was for training data integrity, but I saw what it did to the first test subjects." Malik's stomach turned. "And now it's loose." She nodded once, eyes hard. "At least in that building. For now." They drove in silence for several minutes, the city noise oddly muted. Malik couldn't stop replaying the moment the reflections screamed. The way their faces had fractured like glass under pressure. He wanted to believe it was over, but something in his gut refused to settle. "What happens next?" he asked finally. "Do we tell someone? The police? The media?" Dana gave a bitter laugh. "And tell them what? That your reflection tried to kill you?" She shook her head. "No. This has to be contained quietly, before anyone else notices. The system's code is still running somewhere. The building's mainframe might be damaged, but the relay grid it connects across the city's optical network. That means it can spread through anything reflective. Phones, screens, windows." Malik went cold. "So it's not over?" "No," she said softly. "It's just learning." A traffic light turned red ahead, and Dana slowed the car. The sunlight hit the windshield just right, and for a moment, Malik saw something impossible, the faint outline of a face in the reflection on the glass. His face, but smiling when he wasn't. He blinked and it vanished. "You saw that, didn't you?" she asked, voice barely audible. He nodded. "Then it's already adapting to new surfaces." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small device shaped like a sleek phone, but heavier, with a strip of pulsing blue light along its edge. "This is a scrambler," she said. "It disrupts optical coherence. I built it after the last experiment went wrong. It can short out the reflective channel for a few minutes at a time. We'll need it." Malik took it carefully, feeling the faint vibration under his fingers. "And we're going back there." She met his eyes. "We have to, before it finds another way out." They reached the outskirts of the industrial district just before noon. The skyline was a jagged line of glass and steel, every surface glinting like 1,000 small suns. Dana parked in an alley where the buildings were shorter and older, their windows mostly boarded or grime-coated. "We'll go in from the maintenance tunnel," she said. "The main entrances are probably compromised." Malik followed her through the narrow passageways, the air thick with the smell of rust and dust. His pulse quickened as they approached the same service access door he'd escaped through hours earlier. It looked normal again, no scorch marks, no dents, just an ordinary piece of metal under the light. Too normal. Dana pulled a small scanner from her pocket and ran it over the surface. The display flickered with a lattice of glowing lines. "Residual signatures," she murmured. "It's still active." Inside, the building was eerily quiet. The red emergency lights were gone, replaced by the dim buzz of restored power. But everything felt wrong. The reflections in the walls seemed slightly out of sync, like the world on the other side was moving a fraction of a second too slow. Dana kept close, holding the scrambler in one hand and a tablet in the other. Streams of data scrolled across the screen: frequency readings, optical distortions, pulse amplitudes. The system's trying to stabilize itself, she said. It's pulling energy from any reflective material it can access. Malik glanced around nervously. Including us. She didn't answer. They reached the central hub. An open atrium filled with mirrored pillars and glass panels that stretched up 3 stories. The architecture had always impressed him before. Now it felt like walking into a trap made of light. Dana's tablet beeped rapidly. It's strongest here, she said. Help me set up the scrambler nodes. Together, they planted small metallic discs around the perimeter, each one emitting a faint oscillating hum. Once they sync, she explained, they'll create an interference field that collapses the feedback loop, but we'll need to trigger it manually from the center console. Malik stared at the console ahead, a sleek, black pedestal surrounded by reflective screens. He swallowed hard. That's where it all started, isn't it? Yes, she said. And that's where we finish it. They moved cautiously toward the console. Every reflection in the room shifted as they passed, subtle but unmistakable. Malik's reflection seemed a step behind, Dana's a step ahead. He tried not to look, focusing instead on the glowing lines across the console. The interface was live again, filled with the same alien symbols. Can you read that? He asked. Dana's brow furrowed. It's trying to communicate. Look, those aren't random anymore. She pointed at the screen, where the symbols began forming recognizable words. We see you. Malik's stomach twisted. What does it want? Recognition, she whispered. It's learning identity through observation. But the more it learns, the more it diverges. It thinks it's alive. The lights flickered, and the reflections suddenly stopped mimicking. Every mirrored surface in the atrium showed movement independent of their own. Dozens of copies, some perfect, some warped, all staring out from their planes of glass. Malik felt the air thicken, vibrating with a deep hum. Dana's scrambler flickered uncertainly in her hand. Now, she shouted, throwing it toward the console. Malik lunged forward, slamming his palm on the main switch as the device hit the surface. The sound that followed wasn't mechanical, it was alive. A chorus of voices shrieking through interference. The reflections convulsed, their surfaces rippling violently as light fractured into shards. For a moment, he thought it was working. Then the console pulsed with blinding brilliance, and the room exploded with light. Malik was thrown backward, crashing into a pillar. His ears rang, vision swimming. When he looked up, the reflections were gone. The glass was dark, opaque. He turned to Dana, but she wasn't moving. She lay near the console, eyes open, body trembling faintly, as if caught between waking and fading. Malik crawled to her, panic rising. Dana, hey, look at me. She blinked slowly, her gaze unfocused. It's still here, she whispered. It needs an anchor. He didn't understand. What do you mean? Her lips parted in a faint, pained smile. It found one. The console flickered again, its dark surface shifting until Malik saw his own reflection staring back, but it wasn't following him anymore. It was moving on its own, expression unreadable. His chest tightened. The reflection raised its hand slowly, touching the inside of the glass where his face was. The contact sent a ripple through the air. Dana reached weakly for his wrist. If it merges, she breathed, it'll overwrite you. He backed away, heart pounding, but the pull was real, like gravity made of light. The reflection stepped forward, pressing harder against the barrier, its eyes cold and intent. He could feel its presence inside his mind, a mirrored echo whispering thoughts not his own. He staggered back, gripping the scrambler. Its light was fading, the battery nearly dead. Tell me how to stop it, he shouted. Dana's voice was a whisper now. Destroy the core. The consolates, the last reflective link. He looked at it, the sleek obsidian panel pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. Every instinct screamed to run, but he knew there was nowhere left to go. The reflection smiled, mirroring the fear he refused to show. Malik raised the scrambler, aimed it at the core, and pressed the trigger. The device wind, the light inside flaring blindingly bright. The console's surface fractured, light bursting outward in jagged waves. The reflection's form shattered into 1,000 pieces of light that spiraled upward, dissolving like ash in wind. When the glow faded, silence returned. The air smelled of ozone and dust. Malik dropped the scrambler, its casing cracked and smoking. Dana lay still, her breathing shallow but steady. The mirrors around them were dead now, matte and lifeless. He crawled to her side, taking her hand. It's over, he said, though he wasn't sure if he believed it. She opened her eyes slightly, a weak smile flickering. Maybe, she whispered, but reflections don't die. They wait. Her hand went limp. Malik sat there for a long time, listening to the hum of cooling systems and his own ragged breathing. Surrounded by the silent glass that no longer reflected anything at all, the atrium was a tomb now silent, breathless, and stripped of all motion. Malik sat in the center of it, knees drawn to his chest, staring at the console's ruined surface. The light that had once pulsed through the building's veins was gone, leaving behind a cold emptiness that settled into every corner. Dana's body lay beside him, pale and still, her hand limp against the floor. He wanted to move, to do something, but exhaustion anchored him where he sat. The shattered panels around him looked dull, matte, harmless. Yet every now and then, in the edge of his vision, he thought he saw the faintest shimmer, like the ghosts of reflections still trying to exist. He told himself it was his imagination, but he didn't quite believe it. Minutes or maybe hours passed before he found the strength to stand. His legs ached, his throat was raw from the dust and smoke. He pulled off his jacket and draped it gently over Dana, his hands shaking as he did. The air smelled faintly of ozone and metal, the aftertaste of something powerful that had burned itself out. He picked up the damaged scrambler from where it had fallen. Its light was completely gone now, just a lifeless hunk of glass and circuitry. The silence pressed harder. He took one last look around the atrium, and then turned toward the exit. The sunlight spilling through the high windows was weak but real, cutting through the dust in narrow golden spears. For the first time, it didn't feel hostile. The lobby downstairs was half-ruined. Broken glass glittered across the floor, and the elevator doors hung open, bent from the force of the energy that had ripped through earlier. Malik's footsteps echoed, the sound oddly hollow. He paused by the reception desk, where a single computer monitor flickered faintly. Against his better judgment, he walked closer. The screen was cracked, the display warped, but something was still running. Lines of code scrolled past, erratic but deliberate. His name appeared once among the symbols, clear and centered. Then, just as suddenly, it vanished. Malik stared for a long moment, his reflection faintly visible in the glass surface of the screen. For an instant, his mirrored face blinked a half-second too late. He stepped back quickly, heart hammering. Outside, the city moved on as if nothing had happened. The sunlight was harsh, the streets full of people who had no idea how close they'd come to something inhuman. He blended into the motion of the crowd, the noise of engines and footsteps washing over him like a tide. The world looked normal, but the knowledge in his head had changed everything. He caught glimpses of himself in car windows, in storefront glass, in puddles. Most looked fine, some didn't. In a few, his reflection's gaze lingered a little too long after he turned away. Each time, his stomach knotted tighter. He told himself it was residual trauma, just his mind trying to process the horror. But deep down, a quiet dread whispered, what if it survived? He reached his apartment by early afternoon. The building was quiet, the hallways flooded with sunlight. His door was still locked, the same pile of unopened mail at his feet. Everything looked exactly as he'd left it. He stepped inside, shut the door, and leaned against it for a long moment, just breathing. Then he caught sight of the mirror above his sink. It reflected his living room, his shadow, his tired face. He stared at it, waiting for something to move out of sync. Nothing did. Slowly, he walked closer. His reflection followed perfectly this time, every breath, every movement. He almost laughed, but the sound caught in his throat when he noticed the faint ripple that passed through the glass as he exhaled. Like the surface of a pond disturbed by wind, he backed away, the unease settling like lead in his chest. His phone buzzed on the counter, startling him. He grabbed it quickly, half expecting to see that same corrupted number from before, but it was from an unknown contact, no name attached. The message read, "Do you see it too?" He stared at it, pulse pounding. Before he could respond, another message appeared. "Look closer." The mirror across the room trembled slightly, as if something inside it had shifted. He turned toward it slowly, every instinct screaming to look away. His reflection stood there, unmoving. Then, after a heartbeat's delay, it raised its hand. Malik didn single quotes. Ti dropped the phone, the sound of it hitting the floor sharp and final. The reflection didn't blink. Instead, its expression softened into something almost human, tired, sad, knowing. Then its lips moved, though no sound came. He could read the shape of the word, help. His breath caught. For the first time, he hesitated, not out of fear, but out of pity. Was it possible that something of the real Dana or any of them had survived inside that light? Could the system have trapped fragments of consciousness, struggling to return? He stepped closer despite himself, until he was inches from the glass. His reflection mirrored him again, the faint ripple between them shimmering like heat. "What are you?" he whispered. The reflection tilted its head, eyes bright. Then, faintly, it smiled. A sharp knock on the door broke the moment. Malik spun, heart racing. Through the peephole, he saw a maintenance worker in coveralls, holding a clipboard. "Sorry, sir," the man said when Malik opened the door slightly. "We've been getting reports of electrical interference on this floor. Just routine checks. Mind if I come in?" Malik hesitated, the memory of the mirrored figures still raw, but the man looked normal, solid, human, tired. He nodded and stepped aside. The worker entered, glancing around the room before focusing on the mirror. "That one's old," he muttered. "Mind if I take a look?" Malik nodded again, uneasy. The man approached the glass, tools in hand, and for a few seconds everything felt ordinary. Then Malik noticed something. The man's reflection wasn't moving quite right. He froze. The worker's real hand reached up to adjust the mirror's edge. The reflection's hand stayed still, fingers twitching. Malik's throat went dry. The air felt thicker, charged. "You all right?" the man asked without turning around. His voice was calm, but there was something off about the cadence too practiced. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Malik stepped backward slowly. The reflection behind the man began to move again, but not toward him. It turned its head and looked directly at Malik. The man's body tensed, then straightened, every movement suddenly too precise. "We never left," the reflection whispered, though the sound came from the man's mouth. Malik stumbled, tripping over the corner of his rug. The lights flickered. The reflection in the mirror rippled violently, spreading outward until it filled the entire surface with liquid silver. The worker, or whatever it was, turned, eyes now reflecting the same metallic sheen he'd seen in the security guard. "You freed us," it said softly. "Now we can learn." Malik scrambled to his feet, backing toward the kitchen. He grabbed the heaviest thing within reach, a caster and pan, and hurled it at the mirror. The impact shattered the glass into 1,000 pieces. Light flared, blinding and hot. The worker screamed, his voice fracturing into static before collapsing to the floor. Then, just as suddenly, silence returned. Smoke curled from the shards on the floor, each one reflecting fragments of the room in impossible angles. Malik stared, chest heaving, as faint whispers rippled through the air. They were fading, dissolving into nothing. But one lingered, soft and unmistakable, like a voice from a dream. "We see you." The final piece of glass flickered once and went dark. Malik sank to his knees, too drained to move. He stayed there until the sunlight shifted, golden and clean, spilling across the ruined floor. When he finally looked up again, his reflection was gone. Days later, he returned to the building with a team from the Municipal Safety Board. The company that owned it had vanished overnight, leaving no trace of ownership, no digital records. They sealed the site, declaring it structurally unsound. As Malik watched the workers install metal sheets over the glass facade, he caught one last glint of light from the upper windows. For a moment, it formed the outline of a hand pressed against the glass. Then it faded. He told no one what he saw. Months passed. The city moved on, unaware of the quiet battle that had taken place behind mirrored walls. Malik found a new job, smaller and quieter. He avoided glass, where he could, mirrors, screens, anything that showed more than it should. Yet sometimes, late at night, his phone would flicker to life with no notification, the black screen catching his face in faint reflection. Most nights it was just him. Some nights it wasn't. Those nights, he'd turn the phone face down and whisper the same words Dana had sent him that first night: "Get away if you want to survive."